All statements and opinions expressed by guests of the Adult in the Room podcast are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or opinions of the host, producers, or advertisers. All interviews are presented in their most complete possible form in the interests of free speech. No statements should be interpreted as financial, legal, or medical advice. Listener and viewer discretion are strongly advised.
It's the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's me. I'd like to welcome you to Dennis Kneale. Dennis Kneale. He's an author. He's a guy who's worked at, I think, every business outlet, media outlet. I mean, CNBC, Dow Jones, and all that implies, and that sort of thing. And he's writing a book about Portland. And what I found really interesting is that you got to Portland. You've got several videos, which we may have time to go through, but which I enjoyed though, on your Facebook page. And his last name is Kneale. So I thought, it's Kneale. No, it's Neal. And go follow him on Facebook for sure, and go buy his book because it's going to be called, we think, Oregoners.
Oregoners. It's so good to see you, Victoria.
It's great to see you. Sorry I made you wait. I just had to finish up with some of that info.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Actually, the X platform, the most important media platform in the world. That's where you'll find all of my breaking stuff. Cool. Facebook, I can barely bear. X is amazing because 2 years ago, the media said X is dead. He's destroying Twitter, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And today, this happens. We used to wait for the New York Times to tell us what White House sources were saying. And the New York Times would break the news. Today, the New York Times reports, what's being said on X, what Trump has said, what White House sources are saying. So X has become incredibly influential. And you'll see a lot of Oregon stuff on X and how messed it up. My book's
really is.
How these very well-meaning, incredibly liberal policies are just driving the state into the abyss. I mean, off a cliff. And if they don't do something to fix it, they're going to be in even deeper trouble. And this is a canary in the coal mine for other blue cities in America, because we're seeing more and more the things that are happening. And I'm right here in New York City, my beloved hometown, for 40 plus years. And we just elected a socialist to be the mayor of the
he's a commie. You can say it.
World, a commie Mamdani, I call him. And I can't even believe we've done that. But in Portland, in last November, the voters there said, hold my beer. They elected 4 socialists, Democrats, Socialists of America, to the city council. And they now pretty much lockstep have grabbed 2 allies, and they're setting the agenda there. And it's basically anti-cop when downtown business owners are dying for more cops. It's pro-climate change. It's they want to make homelessness as comfortable as possible. They pass out tin foil so you can snort your methamphetamine off of clean tin foil, and clean needles. Got to make sure you have that. They pass out food, so much food for the homeless that the rats end up eating a lot of it because the homeless can only eat so much.
Oh, there's no shortage of food for the homeless.
I had a guy who was homeless for 4 years in the early 2000s tell me, if you want to get them off the streets, make homelessness as miserable as possible. But here in Oregon, we make it as comfortable as possible. In Portland, I've read that the homelessness is at a rate of 4 times per capita, 4 times the national average.
Oh, yeah, I believe that. Because when you pay people to be homeless, when you give them every opportunity to do their drugs and not be accountable for their usage of the drugs, they stay. They'll come. It's like California, same kind of thing. I want you to, here is one of your quick messages that you put out on Facebook, or at least I saw them on Facebook, but go to X, Dennis Kneale.
Right.
But check this out.
Street Bites 2 on What's Bugging Me that comes out Thursday. I'll be doing something from here about the state of Oregon and the state of Portland. And I attended this big leadership conference, 23rd annual, yesterday. And I was there, 6 or 8 hours. And I got to tell you, the one thing that struck me is that the leadership is not scared enough yet. They don't realize that over $1 billion a year of income is fleeing the state because there are high income tax rates. They've got 3 different income taxes that have been passed that have built up a more than $1 billion surplus they're not even spending, and yet they oppose any effort to kind of siphon off $50 million for more cops because they
don't want more cops.
Portland is at 1993 levels. So they just aren't quite scared enough.
I mean, you go on for not much longer than that, but they're not scared enough. They know.
Generous of you. I wasn't having a great hair day that day, but
well, you're in Portland. You were in Portland, and it was raining. Surprise!
Yeah.
I mean, no, they're not scared enough because they think they're right. They know everything.
Right.
They are the most intelligent people in the room, always. And you went to a leadership seminar with all of these people,
and the 23rd annual summit where it's like 1,000 people, all of these movers and shakers and politicians, state policymakers. It was really something. And while you're talking outside the room with people, and they're telling you how bad it is and how we're in trouble, while inside the room, it's what they call Oregon exceptional and Portland polite, and it's looked upon as rude for anyone to disagree or point out problems. The mayor thought I was being rather rude when I came up to him after his presentation in a breakout session. And he said, we hope downtown where the foot traffic is still 40% down from pre-COVID.
Used to be 80, so.
Fully recovered. But he said, we're going to be back to, pre-COVID in 2030.
Oh,
2030. 10 years after COVID arrived. Are you out of your mind? And I went up afterward and I asked him, and that's not Portland polite. I said, why aren't you doing a more ambitious goal? Why are you, that's just ridiculous that you would take 10 years. How about doing things to make this happen faster? So no. You really can't set goals and miss them. That would be depressing for people. You've got to be more realistic. But when they
don't want to try harder. They just don't want to set goals and then miss them because they're not going to try hard enough.
Right. Well, Tina Kotek, the governor, when she
ran, unfortunately,
we're going to build 36,000 new homes a year. Well, that means in the first 3 years, you'd have 108,000 new homes. Well, no, you have 46,000 new homes. She's missed the goal by more than half. And they need 400,000 homes by the year 2050 to keep up with population, which is actually at negative birth rate right now. But they need that. And at the rate they're building it now, they only built 14,000 in the past year. They're going to wait. They're going to need until 14 years past that before they even meet the goal that they need by 2050. So it's just a mess.
They're very, very high-end building that just went up for sale for the condos that they were going to sell for $1 million in Portland. They are now putting everything, they've cut it in half, and you can get a luxury condo there for $500,000 in Portland. I'm looking for an apartment for a friend of mine, and in Portland, I've been seeing, I'm just being inundated with information from Portland. It's a cheap bunch of people, it's just like super cheap. Why? Because nobody wants to live there. Right. Plus, illegal aliens are leaving. It is absurd. And I want you to hear, if you've not heard this before, for all of you who wonder what in tarnation is happening to Oregon and Washington, I want you to listen to the very brave words of the local Portland Chamber of Commerce head and a Channel 2 KATU big thing about what are we doing wrong?
We're in 9 straight quarters of job losses in our community. It's most particularly located here in Multnomah County. We are 80 out of 81 communities in the country in terms of real estate investment attractiveness. And our consumer confidence, which is tracked sort of like a leading indicator for how people feel about the economy, we're last in the nation. And so these are not things that are good. And the reality of what it does, we see happen literally today or yesterday when they announced another major deficit on the city budget. As business activity declines, so do public coffers also shrink. We are in a juncture, and I want to get back to something Lisa said earlier today. We've got to have vision to execute on these plans like what the mayor's talking about, what the city council and the county are engaged in. We have to take care of the basics, and while we're doing that, we have to acknowledge we're in an economic crisis as well. And if we don't have an economy and we don't have jobs, we will not have the resources to be able to do these things, and we'll be compelled to do things like raise parking rates, which infuriate people and lead to that ongoing negative perception that we have in our community. So it's time to also acknowledge that the economy matters And it's in everyone's interest to have a thriving business ecosystem. And I would just point to what we're saying from Vanessa here.
Listen to this, everybody.
The taxes here are absurd. It's debilitating our economic growth. And while they may feel good and they're things that we may care about, we're going to have a hard conversation about the reality of the future of this community if we can't get these taxes reformed in a meaningful way and not wait and admire the problem, but do it as soon as possible.
One of the highest tax rates in the country.
Yep, that's right. And Washington's right there with them. And California's right there with them. And what I call the West Coast to Mest Coast, about which I write a column every week for PJ Media. It is, I grew up in Portland. This is, I mean, yeah. Oh. So I still have people who, they used to run the world there and whatever. And I will tell you that Tina Kotek, the unfortunately named governor of Oregon, ramrodded through a 40% increase in gas taxes, a 200% increase in vehicle registration fees, a near 300% increase in vehicle title fees, and no wonder people leave, a legitimate taxpayer leaves Oregon every 16 minutes.
Well, I mean, a couple things, and I've just been writing the one of the chapters to the book, and I've been writing exactly these figures and going through that ridiculous tax increases in the DOT plan, which 97% of the testimony was against it, and only 3% from union workers, government unions that would benefit from this tax increase. Simply ridiculous. But one thing is, if you want to help downtown, don't increase parking rates. They just increased them 25% downtown. So stupid of them, right?
So dumb.
Taxes. I just stayed in the Hyatt Regency, a couple weeks ago in Portland, right near the convention center, not near enough, a long rain-soaked walk 2 blocks away. All right, only 10% occupancy in the hotel that week.
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it.
I got only $129 a night, a room, a really nice
Jeez.
room.
In the Hyatt Regency.
Taxes added 38% taxes and fees, so that $129 cost $179.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding me.
I mean, look, it was a 1.5% state occupancy tax, 6% city occupancy tax, 5.5% county tax, 3% Portland tourism assessment. Then there's a destination fee of $25 and those same 4 taxes on that $25. So it's just, who would want to go there? Who would want to stay there? It's ridiculous. And then lastly, I will also be willing to bet that the gentleman who was speaking so eloquently in that video clip, that there was retaliation against him and days and weeks later, because I was interviewing Amy Nichols. She's Cheerful Amy, owner of 2 sports bars that have been there 75 years in place, the Cheerful Tortoise and the Cheerful Bullpen. And we're sitting there and I'm interviewing, and she's telling me every time I go on Fox Business, there's retaliation. The Liquor Control Board will send an inspector. The Lottery Board will send an inspector of the machines. The Health Department. The Health Department was just here 6 weeks ago, she tells me, because I went on, and so they cracked down. I got 100% grading, A grade, right? And 6 weeks later, and that guy behind the counter there, he's from the Health Department. Sure enough, there's this guy looking at the beer taps and inspecting because she's about to go on Fox the next day. There's retaliation. Kevin Looper, a Democrat operative, teams up with Dan Levy, Republican operative. They're working with a group a couple of years ago, and they formed People for Portland. And this is a bipartisan effort to start working on, like, let's stop the homeless camping all around the town. How about that? And do you know that very week, Kevin Looper, the Democrat operative, tells me the windows of his car parked in front of his house were shot out by somebody. How dare you work with the other side? How dare you say that Portland and Oregon are having problems? They are in denial, truly. And Angela Wilhelms runs the Oregon Business and Industry. It's kind of a super chamber, all right? And they're trying to always wake up policymakers. Stop crushing business. Stop killing it. And she says what frustrates her most is there is a lack of recognition and appreciation for the fact that anything you want to do in any society requires a thriving private sector. That's where money for government taxes comes from. That's where money for philanthropy, sponsoring a Little League team, or sponsoring the Oregon Symphony. That's where it comes from. It's a thriving private sector. And you guys keep killing the private sector. You just keep doing things that don't work. And Kevin Looper, that Democrat operative, He's this big barrel-chested, bearded bear of a guy with a gravelly, loud voice. You're with him in the restaurant. You're just wishing, please be a little quieter because, man, people are looking over here. He blamed himself in part for helping deliver that super majority. He said, I just realized recently that, heck, if you don't have a loyal or disloyal opposition, even if you just keep getting things, voted through and reelected, there's no diversity of opinion. No one's going to challenge what isn't working. They don't dare stand up because they don't want to be a threat to the party.
Please don't write it like that, because I'm going to tell you right now, he already knew that.
Yeah,
he knew that.
Yeah.
And so did Dan Levy. Dan Levy's in it, and I know Dan from years back and all that stuff. And he's a great guy, but he's getting paid. And so no hate. I believe people should be paid for doing work, but I'm not entirely sure of what the how altruistic this effort is. I mean, he knew that. They all knew that. Everybody knows that.
Well, sure. Everyone's feeding at the same trough. And I think one problem in Oregon, and it's like the problem in Washington, the Republican Party is weak. They're feckless. And if I said a couple times in a couple interviews, they're kind of like the Washington Generals. This was the team that was paid to lose every game to the Harlem Globetrotters, okay? Mm-hmm. They're fine with being number 2, though, because they're benefiting as well. Same in Washington. I can't believe how much the Republican Party just hates Trump and won't support him and won't put his policies and give him the force of law. I'm sorry to see it.
I think there's a direct through line between what is happening now and the mail-in ballots, because there's so much fraud on the balloting in Washington State, for example, 700,000 ballots, most of which, that have that they can tell, connection to a voter, right? They can't find the voters. Yeah. So, and then in Oregon, they're still fighting with Pam Bondi and Harmeet Dillon to get the information about the voter rolls.
Yes.
And so therefore, if they will fight till the death for that stuff. Just like Jacob Fry and Tim Walz will fight to the death not to do anything that will help ICE, because at this juncture, if you work with these guys or tell them not to kill ICE officers, first of all, they get jumped. And the second thing is, what's going to happen is the feds will have time to go in and do those investigations I was talking about.
Well, one big problem afflicting Oregon, afflicting Portland, is, and now I've totally forgotten my point, but it was really on point.
I'm sorry.
It was really good. It's going to really, really rock you there.
Bummer. Okay, hold on.
Or it'll come back.
Yeah, it will. I'm going to play one of your videos. Okay. And the reason I'm playing one of your videos, this is from the Portland airport, because I know my family knows a person who donated or made sure this happened. Watch this.
Gorgeous. All the incredible Oregon timber in this airport at Portland.
Isn't it gorgeous?
It's so gorgeous.
International. My God.
I mean,
they call it mass timber.
Timber found in the state of Oregon. It was the first. It was the first business. And then they just crushed it.
From private forests, run and operated by Ferris Lumber, who Rob Ferris donated that and or made sure it happened because he's, one of the last guys standing. And I will tell you that the people who are on the city council in the city of Portland, who are this Democratic Socialist contingent that I can't remember, what do they call themselves? The Peacocks or something?
The Peacocks for Progressive Caucus. Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, please.
No, continue.
I was just going to say they're never going to. They don't believe in private property.
Right.
They don't believe that people should have more individual experiences. They want the collective horribleness. Portland is a perfect way. It's a crucible in which you would say this. They've gotten what they want. This is their utopia, and it looks like Portland, which is to say, it's terrible.
Yes. Well, I've got a couple things for you on this. First of all, some stunning figures. The federal government owns almost 60% of the land mass of Oregon, and most of it is timber that you can't touch, right? Because of the freaking spotted owl. They started these policies in the 1990s. There's 14,000 spotted owls back then, apparently. There's 2,500 today. and they're being, run out by this barred owl that the federal government's now going to spend money to have
To
those
kill.
owls killed. Okay, so it's just so
It's the best story ever.
because they can't get the timber that fuels all the fires. There's a new fifth season of weather there, the fire season, the wildfire season. So it's been awful. And since 2010, I think it is, or 2014, 10 million acres of a total 60 million acres have burned. And today, I heard a presentation.
Sound
Today,
like me.
2 out of every 3 trees are being lost to fire or bugs. So you wouldn't let anyone chop them down, but you're losing 2/3 of the forest anyway. It's absolutely horrible. But have you heard about this mass timber movement? Mass timber, they now know, it's like beaver board, but it's pressing together a whole bunch of thin layers and veneers all together. It is as strong as steel. And you can use it to construct housing. You can use it to construct bridges. And I think that if they want to save Oregon, they ought to free up timber harvesting and let them go for it for a few years or something to see what you do. And then you'd have fewer fires, and then take all that timber and build housing with it, because you have a vast shortage, and it's supposedly contributing to homelessness. Well, I think what contributes to homelessness is your own drug problem or mental problem.
Right.
But suddenly you'd kill 2 birds with 1 stone. It's a great fix.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth bringing up and seeing what the unfortunately named Tina Kotek, has to say about it. But my guess is that she'll say no. And my understanding also is that I just sort of saw a headline, and that is that Tina Kotek now wants to withdraw the all those tax increases I just mentioned, because she doesn't want it to go to a public vote.
It was such an emergency. This is an emergency. It's such an emergency that I'm going to call the legislature back into special session. You failed to pass it. I'm going to call you on Labor Day and destroy your Labor Day weekend. And sure enough, the House on Labor Day approved it right away. Oh, we're sorry. It's an emergency. And then she waits 37 days to sign it. What happened to the emergency? She was hoping that since they only have 90 days for the end of the session to get it on the ballot, I'm going to get it. But what it ended up instead pissing people off, and it gave them a chance. Bruce Starr, who helped run the effort,
Bruce Starr's a good guy.
Majority Republican leader, told me it gave him a chance to get organized. He said if she had signed the first day, we would have been in a mess. But instead, we had polling, we had volunteer groups, and they needed 78,000 signatures. They got 250,000 without spending a dollar, all volunteers.
Yeah.
And then the ballot was going to be on at the same time, November 26th, as Tina up for re-election. It's her tax increase. It was going to crush her. And now this supposed emergency, and she wants to repeal the law so that the ballot initiative can't get voted on. It is
in November. Doesn't want that for sure.
Just unbelievable.
You've read the tea leaves so accurately. I had the pollster on not too long ago on that issue, and it was just like, did these people just not even hear themselves? No, they don't. And you know what, Dennis Kneale? They don't listen to anyone except their own ideological.
And the unions.
Oh yeah. Well, that's it. That's to whom they pray. Those are the guys that get.
Candidates, all women, in 2022 raised a total of $70 million. Now, Tina, she got about $6.5 million from Democrat Party sources, right, local, state, and national. But she got $5.5 million from unions. I mean, they just own her. Oregon is one of only, I think it's 5 states that have no limits on contributions. And so the unions just come in and they own the Democrat Party. And I had one guy tell me that a couple weeks ago, one of the unions, SEIU, gave the 25-27 budget to the governor's office. And meanwhile, her office is lined with union people who are her advisors. Sure. And there's another one told me that when you are a Democrat and you elected state legislature, your first day of the new term, the union shows up and says, here's your chief of staff. And it's
I believe that, but I've never heard that, but I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. Oh, God, that's amazing. That is amazing. Same way in California, where unions run California, no doubt.
And can anyone name, Victoria, a single industry that has thrived with union representation? Autos, they're not thriving. They've had problems for decades, right? Steel, hurt by unions, right? Government is incredibly incompetent and inefficient, and it has unions. Do you know that unions represent less than 7% of private company workers, but they represent 40% of government workers.
And you know, Oregon is the Oregon is the state in which the Janus decision, from which the Janus decision came, which is the one where it was a Supreme Court decision and it says, no, you cannot compel people to have to join a union. No, you, in fact, so what they've tried to do now is to make illegal any attempt to remind people that they have a Janus exemption for
Right.
joining unions. So they're trying to make that outlawed.
Infringement of free speech. It's a government infringing on the right of someone to criticize something,
Yes.
which is just terrible. But there's a lot of that. You know, I find that my liberal friends are unable to have a conversation. They're unable to have a debate. I have always loved a good argument. That was in my CNBC profile when I was an anchor there. And but they get so upset. I was thrown out of my ex-wife's house because I was defending Trump and upsetting her and her new husband so much that they asked me to leave. Okay. I mean, I have a friend, a high school buddy. We've been close because he's up here in New York. We were down in South Florida high school. 50 years we've been friends. And I go months without a returned call, without a returned text. I'm wondering what's going on. And I'm asking him, like, are you in trouble? Is something wrong in your life? You know, oh my gosh. And he finally admits it. He says, look, I've just been taking a break because you're just talking to you. He said, this is very embarrassing. I was very angry, but it was very funny. Talking to you now is like talking to someone you've known your whole life, but then they've just discovered God and all they want to talk about is the baby Jesus.
I mean, I get that because I think that it is a rival. Anybody else who does not toe their line, and the political line for the Democrats are generally speaking a religion for them.
Yeah.
And if you engage in any heretical speak, they're going to, of course, assume that you're that guy too. But
it is their religion. And, you know, Dan Levy pointed this out to me, that the three most important indicators of how you're going to vote are income level, education level, and religion. And higher income, higher education, no religion, you vote liberal. And, you know, they don't have anything centering their life. A lot of them don't even have much of a career. So you latch on to all of these different overlapping causes, LGBTQ and Palestine, etc. Right. And you're marching and you feel like your life has meaning when really it's utterly empty because you lack some kind of center that is really yours.
It's or somebody or something. I guess that this is the thing for which it's something bigger than themselves, politics. But I mean, you're not going to find any. You will not find any hope in men, everybody. That's not going to happen. So when is your book going to come out, do you think? Oregoners.
You know, there's so much happening, right? It's breaking as we speak. And this happened on my last book. I wrote The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk. Basically, it offers 11 lessons of Elon. What would Elon do? And we can live a better life if we do things that Elon would do. And wait, why did I bring that up? Because there was a lesson there. But as I'm writing the book on Elon, okay, at first he's a hero to everyone. And as I'm writing, he's starting to ally with Trump just as I'm turning it into the publisher. Oh my gosh. And so I kept kind of delaying because there's so much happening. And that's happening here. I mean, just as I'm writing the chapter, I mentioned the DOT stuff, you end up seeing Tina Kotek turn this entire fast one, pull another fast one and say, I want to take this emergency law and repeal it. I mean, what a liar. What
a liar. What a freaking liar.
So I got to get this thing written fast and get it out. It'll be out in the second half of 26. You know, the publishing industry is the one business that has not been utterly transformed by the internet. They are still stuck in the 90s.
Yeah, that's okay. That means we don't have to do anything to gear up, right?
They take 9 months to get a book out. That is just way too patches on the elbow and way too like smoke puffing on a pipe. Man, that ought to be out in less than 3 months. But
right.
We've got to get it ready in the sales channel. Our sales force needs time to lock it up. You know what? They didn't do anything for my freaking book. Just get it out there, for gosh sakes.
Yeah, I mean, did they not market it for you or anything?
Well, I mean, here's the good news is the advance was so small. They'll start making money per book much sooner than if the advance was really large. You're not making $1.
Sure.
Okay, so But the publishing industry, my gosh, you know, an artist in a museum, if a gallery sells the painting, the gallery takes a 50% cut. My God, that's just usually
Wow.
do that. Well, in publishing, it's like they're like 90%, man. If I can sell a book, I'm lucky to get like $3 or $4. They're selling that thing for $20 or $30.
Right.
And meanwhile, they didn't spend much advertising. I did. I spent my own money trying to advertise that thing. I wanted to get it on the bestseller list. I was dying to hit the New York Times best.
Uh-huh.
So I manifested, right? I never referred to it as a book. I would
What'd you call it?
do it as my bestseller, my bestseller, my bestseller. And it didn't work. It didn't make it. But you know what? You got to dream huge. That's one of the 11 lessons. Dream huge and be willing to spend decades in pursuit of it. Elon does that. And you may not get as far as you thought, but you get so much farther than if you'd set a realistic goal. There's nothing wrong with falling short of hugely ambitious goals because you got a lot farther than anyone else. I mean, Elon has wanted to go to Mars for over 20 years. He still ain't there, but he launches every year 90% of the rockets that go into space around the world. I mean, Russia could have dominated rockets. They were amazing at building ICBMs. And so the U.S., after the collapse of the Soviet Union, goes in there and says, we'll pay you to turn your rockets into like launching satellites. So they helped subsidize the start of this industry. They're doing great. Elon goes there to see them in 2000. I want to buy 2 rockets for $5 million. I know you just sold 2 rockets to someone else for this. So let me do that. Why? I want to go to Mars. They laugh in his face. They spit on his shoes. They turn him down. And so then Elon, literally on the flight back from Moscow, is sketching out something. He's designing a rocket. And he's deciding that all a rocket is stainless steel and fuel. And that starts him doing his own SpaceX. And today, the Russians are nowhere in the rocket business. And his SpaceX has all but destroyed the Russians. And so it's another lesson. I mean, the opposite of what they expected came out and happened because of this. I mean, Tina Kotek, that's a lesson 11 is the most likely outcome is the most ironic one, the opposite of what you expected to happen. She thought that by delaying her signatures on that tax increase, that she's going to stop them from challenging it. She instead made the opposite outcome happen. They challenged it and got 250,000 signatures, and now it's going to be on the ballot. And it's the opposite of what she tried to make happen. It's a lesson of Elon. That's how I came up with that.
I like that. I like it a lot. What was the thing he does? What was because this is your previous book and it's the management style of Elon Musk. What would you say is the most successful thing he does?
He dreams huge and pursues it doggedly. Okay. But lesson 1 is this. All of this may be fake, so just go for it. Elon really believes there's a very good chance that we live in a computer simulation.
He thinks this is a simulation.
And you think it's ridiculous, right? It's just this, though. It definitely would be possible to have a simulation 10,000 years from now that's so good you don't even know it, right? 10,000 years from now, right? Well, the universe is almost 14 billion years old. That means there's 1.4 million spans of 10,000 years. And you're saying that nowhere in the universe has this happened in 1.4 million chances that it's only going to happen 10,000 years from now? It seems very unlikely. It seems like, yes, it can be very true. But then once you think that somewhere in the universe simulations have been created, well, then now you think, well, what means that you're in the main one? Because you could be in a character inside that simulation that he's running. And you could be a 6th or 8th generation character down inside. So it starts to get really fascinating. Then I interviewed this physicist about Kelvin Vobson. And I'll stop here. I'm sorry to filibuster.
No, I love this. So I could just talk to you all day. So,
everywhere in nature that it may be true that it's a simulation, because if there were a simulation, it would require the computing power of about 45 planet Earths of computing power to do a good simulation. Okay. Well, that means that you'd want to cut down on storage and information storage as much as possible. Well, he notices that the COVID vaccine started out with a super long DNA sequence, and 15 generations later, it's got only like half the characters of DNA. Why is it deleting space? Why would it do that to just do the same function of infection? Why would it do that? He notices a butterfly has a pattern instead of random all over the place because that uses less information. Holmes's rules of atomic structure for how atoms arrange themselves in a molecule follows a formula that uses up less space. So he's thinking, why everywhere in nature. They're deleting and deleting. Well, maybe it's because we're in a simulation and they got to cut down on information storage. It's very fun to think about.
Oh, it is kind of wild. But if anybody were to come up with a, don't you think if anybody was going to come up with a simulation, it would be Elon and or Mark Zuckerberg?
Yeah.
Because Mark Zuckerberg essentially tried to do that as a sort of an
Right.
option, and that
They
failed.
spent $30 billion in Facebook. $30 billion they just wasted away
For his metaverse.
to come up with the metaverse, because this is an awkward guy. I've met him twice who, never went to parties, and he would like to stay at home on the sofa with goggles on. But, I had the CEO of a porn company, of Vivid Entertainment, tell me years ago, you know why porn has never caught on with the goggles? Because they're just not sexy. You look at the other person and it's just ridiculous as they're sitting there with goggles on. So that's
interesting.
why porn has never come to 3D.
Ah,
I digress.
not
Yeah.
that I really cared, but I mean, that's an interesting, interesting little detail there.
I think that's why Mark Zuckerberg wanted the metaverse. Okay, I think he wanted it for porn, so he could do
Really? I mean, that is the most used activity on.
Well, porn has always led the way in every
Computer.
other technology. Porn was first. VHS ended up winning over Betamax, in part because porn guys went after that first, because they don't feel like it has to be perfect before you introduce it.
Right.
The regular purveyors it has to be perfect.
I'm old enough to remember that Betamax was better, but didn't win. So,
Yeah,
you have to have early adopters, and apparently didn't have enough of those to make it worth their while.
yeah.
Interesting. Oh, wow. That's crazy.
So, but that's really cool that you came from Portland. You know it that well. I mean, my gosh.
Yeah. I know a lot of people out there.
There a lot of them are blinded and brainwashed.
They are.
They are in denial about
You
the
know,
problems they have
I
created.
think it's worth the time to go over, just FYI. I thought of this the other day. I left my aunt a quote from the speech, A Time of Choosing by Ronald Reagan from 1964 or something like that. You just keep going through that, and you learn a hell of a lot of information about how the socialist mind works and how it looks to other people. And when you start breaking it down the way in which he did it there, it really does describe the people and their beliefs in Portland and Seattle. And then Seattle just hired a socialist like Mondam. She's not a socialist. They're all communists, by the way. Vladimir Lenin said the purpose of socialism is communism. Okay, so let's just cut out the middleman.
Right.
Call them what they are. They all want to be commies.
Yes.
So I've given up in any of my writing. I say screw that. They're commies. That's it. Period. I mean, because they are.
Well, when Mamdani said we want to, get rid of the frigidity, I think it might have been a typo from the speechwriter. They might have meant rigidity of rugged individualism and embrace the collective, the warmth of collectivism. Collectivism means like Soviet bread lines, man.
Yeah.
I can't believe he used that language, and language is important.
You can't?
He knows it.
Oh, he knows. By the way, I think he did mean frigidity because he compared and contrasted it with the warmth.
Frigid, yeah.
So I think he meant that.
But frigidity always referred to, lack of desire, in the old
Sure,
days.
absolutely. I'm gonna.
Rugged individualism is frigid. I don't quite get that.
Well, come on, man. You don't get it because you're normal. You aren't dumb. Here. I want you to let's talk. I know we're still talking, and we got a few more minutes. Actually, I usually try to keep it to an hour, but this is way too much to. This is much more interesting. Okay, I want you to riff on this chick, and this is Zoran Mandani's tenant analyst, or Czarina, or whatever she's.
I
the
think
housing
the
advice.
reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good, and we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and
The dead
towards
eyes.
a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently, and it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Glottal fry and
the movie Flashdance wants its wardrobe back. Okay, all about that woman. I mean, it's just absolutely awful. I'm sure, by the way, that she's in a rental apartment.
rent stabilized.
That was a Declaration of Independence that mentioned life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or was it the Constitution? That line,
It was the Declaration of Independence.
originally, I learned way back in college, that line was life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Okay. And they changed it in the rewrite to happiness. But it tells you a lot about what our founding fathers really thought about property rights. I'm about to lose power here. Oh my God.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Hang on. I'm going to have to.
Oh, you got to plug in your computer.
Okay.
I knew a guy back when the Balkans broke up after the failure and fall of the Soviet Union, and they devolved off, and then they became little satellite nations. But they had something that other nations that don't, and they had these are former communist nations that were still essentially filled with the same leaders that they had been previously, but now they had the freedom to rethink the superstructure under which they would operate their countries now that they were out from under the wing of the Soviet Union. And I think it was Bulgaria. And this is back many, many years ago, but I talked to an attorney who was a law professor, and he was sent over there to find out, help them set up their new constitution and their primary first principles under which they would operate. Private property was the very fundamentally first thing that came to mind beyond anything else.
Yes.
That's it.
I've got some string on that because the socialists, the communists, the liberals, they so want to help the poor, right? Mm-hmm. And yet there was a guy named DeSoto. I think he had like a famous explorer's last name. We did a story years ago at Forest Magazine. And DeSoto was preaching that the way to uplift the poor is to give them property rights, is to let them own places where, they have generations of people. This is happening in England as well, where people don't own the land they live on, and it's owned by some faraway owner or something. But property rights is the way to help solve the problem of poverty at a time when this Mamdani advisor now is talking about taking away our property rights. I think she forgets one thing. There's something like 300 to 400 million guns in this country. Mm-hmm. Take away the property I own, you come and see me.
Yeah. And I think there's not much of an appreciation for John Locke's theory of private property and land ownership, that I think maybe somebody besides, they should probably take those econ classes while they're getting their heads full of stupidity.
Well, he insists that he wants to help the housing crisis, but if you want to help housing, you've got to incentivize developers to want to make money by building new stuff. And if you're telling them we're going to cap your rents and we're going to control how much you can charge, who's going to want to build? My landlord, I rent. Unfortunately, I got divorced. I lost the apartment in divorce. I've rented for 20 years, all right, in New York. What a waste of money, millions of dollars. And my landlord, who owns this apartment, 85-year-old son of Greek immigrants, came here at age 6. I mean, this man's been worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He has owned over 1,000 apartments in Brooklyn and Manhattan. He started buying in the 60s, okay, and just taking his savings and buying and buying and buying. And he says no one could ever do this today because it takes months and months to get a permit. It takes up to 10 to 15 years in a place like LA to build from scratch. So I know a developer there who only buys ghetto buildings and fixes them up because that he can do in 5 years. It's just ridiculous, the amount of regulation, the amount of cost, and they're just in your face all the time. And so no one could do that today. And that's too bad that that kind of entrepreneurial up by the bootstraps opportunity is being hurt and crushed so much by over-regulation, especially at the local level.
Try being a Palisades resident who lost their home 1 year ago yesterday in the fire that they allowed to burn.
And they promised they were going to build back, and of course they haven't. No, and they're not approving permits, and they're hoping to turn it into public housing, for God's sake.
Yeah.
I mean, the housing crunch they keep talking about, no one ever Gretzky's it and skates to where the puck's going to be.
I know. That's because they can't think like that.
Yeah.
They're not entrepreneurial. They don't want to win. They just want to win the moment and of the political moment, but they don't want to win for people and individuals because that will take away from their win.
Yes. I had a smart guy, he's starting a new app that lets you evaluate your state against 50 other states with all this data, et cetera. He was at that leadership summit, and he said, government is the only entity that is not judged by outcomes and results. Government is judged only by whether we keep getting reelected. And the problem here is Democrats just keep getting reelected. So there's nobody saying, you know, we're in danger. We're heading off a cliff. We've got to fix this. As long as they keep getting reelected, they're fine.
Yeah, they're fine. Nobody else is. And then they rig the elections because they've got the mail ballot abilities to do that. And that's why the unions work so hard to keep these people in line. And it's why the category killing SEIU union is preeminent.
Yes. As a matter of fact, Oregon holds the world record, the national record for going the longest without electing a Republican governor.
Yes.
1982 was the
Vicatia.
last time a Republican was elected. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, in fact, there was only one statewide race that was won by a Republican since the introduction of the mail-in ballot. That was Dennis Richardson, who was the Secretary of State. Yeah, he was a great guy.
Republican, yeah. And I've had several people tell me the same thing. We're never going to be able to elect a Republican governor. Why? Because they will just keep counting ballots.
It's right.
Win.
And, you know, it's like the Soviet Union where the old man, you know, standing on the, you know, smelling the beet soup from the restaurant down the street and just goes, "Weh." They just shrug. That's all they got.
And
because
then, though, the other side, they try to demonize us as election deniers.
Right,
We're
of course.
undermining the election process, that we would dare raise questions. And now we see that in Georgia, 100,000 or more ballots that had no history. We're seeing it all over the place. And yet you guys were calling us deniers.
Yeah. The 2020 election, Arizona, Maricopa County stuff. The Nevada stuff, we knew there were real bad stuff. There were bad things going on there when you got casinos getting, and like, for example, people I respect and admire who they're not firebrands or anything. I mean, attorneys and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And they go, this Nevada thing, there's bad stuff, bad juju happening there. And now we're starting to get the receipts on it. All of Arizona getting the receipts on it. We already know Georgia we found out thanks to a person who is who self-financed, who got the receipts because he got a FOIA request.
Right.
I mean, it's just absurd.
Well, I mean, I always try to spin things forward with some hope and optimism.
Yeah.
Because hope is a decision. And with something like this, the more you know, the more distressing it becomes. It just feels like so octopus-like and so unable. How are we ever going to fix any of this? But when you see what this 23-year-old pup, Nick Shirley, did, 120 million views of his 42-minute video about fraud in daycare and Somalis in Minneapolis, incredible impact. The media were ignoring it and trying not to cover it at all.
Yeah.
But the fact that there are these citizen journalists, there are people who are getting so fed up with this and now they have a platform for getting the truth out that won't be censored the way every other social media platform still is censored and restrained. Now they have X. Thank you, Elon Musk.
Thank you, Elon Musk.
I'm hopeful that there's an uprising happening. And what we saw in Oregon, where voters were just asleep for so long, and now they got 250,000 signatures when they needed only 78,000, challenging this tax increase. I think I hope people will start rising up and saying enough of this. I mean, even the government itself estimates that $500 billion in Medicare and Medicaid is fraud. The government says that. Under Biden, the government said that.
Yeah, I think Elon came up with that too. I also in California, there's signatures to put on the ballot, enough signatures to put on the ballot a voter identification bill.
Wait, what?
A voter identification bill initiative.
Yeah. Right.
So,
they're also trying this billionaire tax, a one-time.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to seize your wealth. Even if you lost money that year, we're going to come in and just tax you based on your wealth. It's such a bad idea because no tax ever stays at the wealthy. I mean, the 1913, they ushered in the income tax, and it aimed only at people who were making the equivalent of about $12 million a year in today's dollars. That's the only ones who paid the tax. And look where that went. Also, look at cell phone tax. It's one of the most progressive, highest tax services. And it's because it started with all these high taxes on rich guys who could afford a cell phone. Today, all of the poor have a cell phone, and they're paying that same rich guy tax rate.
Wow. Well, Dennis Kneale, thank you so much for coming on. The book it's going to be released. Oregoners. It's just chronicling the dumb decisions, the idiocy, and maybe some of the good moves Oregon's done, but I can't see that there would be that many of those going on.
We got to sell the hope. We got to look at some of the mavericks who are finally speaking up at the risk of retaliation.
Yeah, well, that's
start our conversation. I would come on anytime you have some guest that flakes out or something, and you need guest, I'm available. As you can tell, I have plenty that's bugging me. That's my podcast, What's Bugging Me. That's why I do those video bits. I'm so glad you saw them. I mean, you instantly gave that video far more views than it ever got on its own. So
I love it. Thank you so much. Appreciate you coming on, and you just hang in there and keep fighting and have hope, as I know you do. So thank you. I appreciate it. That is amazing. So I enjoyed that convo. And if you have any observations, if you have any ideas for shows, Victoria@VictoriaTaft.com, or you can hit me up on X @VictoriaTaft. So, and of course on Facebook, wherever we are, that you're seeing us right now, this very moment on this live stream, hit up the comments and comment and say, hey, I want you to do this story. Will you do this story? Please hit your notification thing, okay? Because that tells the algorithm that we're here, and it also, of course, brings us up on your notifications. And so that's the lifeblood of anybody who's a live streamer, right? I mean, so I would appreciate it if you did that. That'd be so neat. Appreciate that very much. And follow me on X. Let's see. In fact, it's been God bless Elon, but man, oh man, Shevitz, it takes so long I've been on the radio for years. I write. I've been writing. I've been on television. Years. I can't even get to 10,000 followers. It's the craziest thing. Please follow me on X. Is basically what I'm saying. Please. Anyway, if you've got anything more on the Minnesota ice shooting, I'd love to hear about it as well. So let me know about that as well. Once again, Victoria@VictoriaTaft.com, or hit me up on any of the platforms where you're seeing the live stream. I'm going to be back on Tuesday. I'm thinking I'm going to be able to see the Show on Tuesday. He's got some new reporting coming out of Seattle with respect to the folks who are running fraudulent daycare centers. Oh, see, it's not only happening there. It's happening everywhere. You hang in there. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. God bless you, and I'll see you next Tuesday. How about that? Thank you so much for watching and listening to this episode of the Adult in the Room podcast. We do not take you for granted. We appreciate every single person who tunes in every week to listen and watch this program. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday, live streaming on Rumble, and then on every other podcast platform shortly thereafter, when we can port it over and get it over there as soon as we can. All the shows can be found at VictoriaTaft.com, where the censorship regime has been banned by me. Follow me on social media at these names: Victoria Taft, the Adult in the Room podcast, and the Victoria Taft Show. Send media inquiries, or any others for that matter, to Victoria@VictoriaTaft.com. And here's a big ask. Would you please subscribe, share, like, comment, recommend, and give this program a 5-star rating where you can? We really appreciate it. We do not take that for granted either. Follow my work at, you guessed it, VictoriaTaft.com. PJ Media, I write tons over there. Flamingo Audiobooks, and of course the radio. I don't do this alone. This show is produced and engineered by Overall Media. 1A Cast is responsible for some of the Adult in the Room podcast's imaging. Logo design by Hageman Creative. The Adult in the Room podcast is produced at Flamingo Road Studios. All rights reserved.